What's up, everyone? So today I want to make a video discussing some of the diet keys for lean maxing and specifically how to avoid overeating. So this is going to be a little bit more focused on your mindset. So let's get right into it. So what are some of the key triggers for overeating? These are some things I've identified both with myself being involved with nutrition for almost a decade now and also working with numerous clients who have struggled with similar things. So the key thing with what I'm going to list out is trying to figure out what is your main weakness and how you can sort of triumph that weakness. So let's get right into some of the common traps we have. So emotional stress and just the overall lack of dopamine. So if you're going through a stage of like a breakup or depression, this can lead to some overeating just because you're looking for that cheap dopamine fill. And this is something that I dealt with in the past when I was having some other struggles in my personal life where I generally have the discipline all the time, but then when I get that extra sort of food that can be a little bit tempting, I just fall into this all or nothing mentality. And I sort of thought like to myself, why am I doing this? Like, this is such a crazy binge I'm doing right now. You start to think to yourself, look, there's something deeper. Like, I'm clearly not satisfied with something in my life. So I had to, evaluate this. Like, what are you anticipating in your life? What's not going well? And this is too big of a complex problem for me to really solve in this video about how to like find your passion or how to resolve your life after something, but something to be aware of. And it'd be better spent using that time to think about how to improve that issue than sort of use food as a cope. Next thing we have is boredom. This is something I remember being a child and you're at home on like a Saturday, maybe you're playing video games and you're sort of bored passing the time, maybe watching TV or playing video games, and you don't really know what to do, so you just grab something out of the snack jar and you end up just eating food. If you're someone who is actually going to binge eat or just overeat throughout the day, this is something that can be dangerous. So it's really just you being bored and then trying to use the food, the dopamine, as a way to cope with that boredom. So pretty correlated to the first thing, but a little bit less severe. The next thing we have is something I dealt with a lot through high school, and that's lack of sleep. So if you don't have enough energy to get through the day, the lack of sleep is going to hit you, and you're not going to have as much willpower either. So this is the thing where you'll start using snacks and sugars just to give you that energy to get something done for the next hour or so, and then it becomes time to refill that cycle and get more sugar, more snacks to try to get you through the day. So getting enough rest can be a huge component to avoid overeating and ultimately get you as lean as possible in a healthy way. The next thing we have is combining activities. So if you're someone who's really into like watching a movie and eating a snack at the same time, or getting that, big pizza for the football game or whatever sport you're going to watch, this can be dangerous as well because you're combining the food with like a 2-3 hour long activity. If you're watching a TV show or a movie, sports game, it ends up being like, I'll just combine the food, with the whole game, and you end up spending 3 hours eating. And maybe you didn't stuff your face within that first hour, but you just progressively ate for 3 hours. So that can be dangerous as well. So trying to be cautious of that is super important. And the next thing we have is just these hyper palatable foods. Your environment can play a huge role in this. So some people are going to be a little bit limited. If you have others in your house that bring this food and you see it all day, it's going to be tempting. So, trying to avoid seeing that food as much can help you a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, this is where you are just kind of going to need some discipline if it's really hard to get out of the house. But if you're someone who's living alone, just don't buy it. That's really the best way to avoid it. It's pretty simple at the end of the day. And the next thing we have is starve maxing. So going to some of these extreme calorie deficits or doing extreme amounts of cardio will start to backfire for you. So I've had clients come to me and say, well, why can't I just do 2 hours, 3 hours of cardio? Like, I'm willing to do it. I've seen the videos of Ronnie Coleman, spend so much time on a treadmill. And you have to explain to them that might help you get leaner faster, but it's going to create this huge deficit for you to where Once you actually do get lean, you're going to have to keep doing that amount of cardio or keep holding your calories so low to the point where you're going to end up being on this like diet level metabolism for so many more months than necessary. So that's something where avoiding these, crazy deficits is going to be super important for you. And it kind of goes into some of my last points, but ultimately you're going to need the discipline to be able to stick with the diet for multiple months. Or if you're just someone who's already lean, but you maybe struggle with overeating, or that's sort of your barrier that's keeping you from getting towards a healthy body fat, you're going to need discipline. And also for more of the dieters, the all or nothing mentality. This is something I'm, very victim of being an extremist, is that it's like, look, if I'm going to go off the plan today, I'm just going to go crazy. So this is something you also need to be careful about, trying to be a little bit more healthy and moderate with your diet so you're not falling into these traps that do these huge cheat days to then where they're naturally going to put you in a position to where the next day you don't even want to eat because you're just so full, so stuffed, your digestive system is wrecked, and you're like, I can't eat for the next day or two. And then what happens? Once you didn't eat for a day or two, you're super hungry, and it's going to create this cycle to where you just want to keep binging. So that's going to be another key problem that I want you guys to avoid. And that kind of goes hand in hand with lack of structure. But if you don't have sort of a good plan for yourself, it's going to be difficult to avoid overeating if you don't know, like, okay, this is the certain amount I need to eat. Because if you're sort of just eyeballing how much food you're going to eat, it can also be difficult to where you're going to let your mind do the talking when you're pouring out the amount of food. For example, if you're pouring out the amount of oats, you might just think, I just want more today. So you're sort of going based off your feelings, not necessarily your actual metabolism. So next slide I'm going to get into is some of the key pillars and mental tricks that you guys can use. And I'm going to show you guys a sample of what my diet is when I'm struggling with this. So what are some things to remember? Being busy is going to help you a lot. Avoiding too much intense cardio. So specifically like HIIT cardio, like I've made videos in the past, but like doing boxing, sweating a ton, getting your heart rate up a ton, that's just going to spike your appetite even more. So if you go with more of a walking approach, steady state cardio approach, not too much running, it can be a little bit easier to manage the appetite, and you'll end up being like, wow, I didn't burn as many calories today, but I had no desire to overeat. And in the long run, that's going to pay off more than trying to be too extreme with things. Another thing is eating outside of your home. So it's crazy, but like when I'm with friends at a restaurant and I'm like, dang, like I could keep eating this food all day, but I'm with the group, we have things to do, and I'm not going to be like, hey guys, let me go order another hamburger. Let me go order a couple more hamburgers and another shake. Like it's just not something you're going to do when you're out with friends. It's like you got more things to do. Maybe some of that social pressure is helping you avoid some of that as well. So that's super important if being at home alone and is just too comfortable for you. The next thing we have is meal prep. So if you just have your meals prepared for the week, this can be another key factor to where you just don't have to think or go into your emotional rationalization. You just have to microwave it and you're good to go. That's what you're getting. You're not going to eat more. Simple. Next thing is hydration. Sometimes you'll realize if you just have a couple glasses of water, you realize, oh, I'm really not that hungry. I was actually just thirsty. And it can sort of help you cope for the next couple hours and get that stomach full. Next thing we have, this is a soft sort of stimulant, but using caffeine, this can help you a lot to where you just aren't as hungry throughout the day. And ultimately, you just don't have to, really put that much extra thought into it. So getting some of the energy from caffeine is going to help you avoid some of your appetite desires. And then, like I mentioned in the first slide, like just avoiding certain food triggers. Like if there's certain foods that maybe you think, like for most people, it's not that big of a problem. Like for example, like if I have strawberries in the house, like that can be something where I could just eat strawberries all day. Like it's sweet. Like some people might want to put them down, it might fill them up, But I could just keep going with foods that are sweet like that. But you might not struggle with other fruits. Like you might be fine with like a banana, for example. Oranges might be good for you, but it might be like blueberries, watermelon. Like you just can't resist with those. And eventually they're much better options if you're just like, I'm going to binge. But, it will pay its consequences for you and how you feel. And so now I'm going to look on the right side. So what are some of the diet pillars? So stop combining some foods. So specifically, like one thing I've dealt with is like oats plus peanut butter. That just increased the taste of oats tenfold. But if you eat your oats plain and then maybe you just have the scoop of peanut butter elsewhere, you're good. So understanding, well, maybe if I combine these foods, it just tastes too good and I can't avoid the combination. Like I love the recipe, but if you ate it by itself, no issues. So that's something where you can evaluate within your own diet. Next we have is eating protein first. This is a pretty common recommendation, but it is the most satisfying macronutrient. And if you start your meal with a bunch of bread at a restaurant, you're just going to want to keep going on that instead of like filling up the stomach first with the stuff that is most important. Next, we have the low fat or low carb approach. So the issue is when you start combining the fuel sources, and really it can be better described sometimes as like low protein. But if you're someone who's like having 100 grams of fat and then like 200 grams of carbs, it's a lot of both. So it gives you more chances to make some of these combinations like oats and, nut butter. And you're starting to combine two fuel sources that are palatable. So specifically, I would say go for a low fat diet or a low carb diet. For most people, a low fat diet is going to be the most realistic, just because you're pretty much going keto if you're doing a low carb diet. So I would just say, like, once again, knowing the approaches, because another thing is your body's going to be better at metabolizing one of these macronutrients. So if we keep the fat low, you're going to start to feel better because you're going to get more carbs in return, because you're just going to replace those calories with more carbs. And then the more carbs, you're going to feel more energized, more efficient with that fuel source. Because if you're adding in the fats as well, your body's not going to pick to use that fat source as a energy source first, and it's not as efficient at using it. So therefore, when you're starting to burn off some of that fat you ate, you're really just going to want more carbs in return. And this is what happens when people are on their first couple diets in the keto diet. Next we have is like low salt. This can be another thing. Like if you're eating like some of these foods that are unsalted, like unsalted chips or some of these other foods where you commonly eat them salted, like nuts, for example, if you're eating salted nuts, that can be a lot harder to put down than unsalted nuts, for example. So understanding that it might just be the salted, version of that food. Like when I was like, I've experimented with like keto diets and whatnot, and like eating the salted butter is a lot different than eating the unsalted butter. So being cautious about that is super important as well. And then just to recap, this is sort of a diet I'll go to if I just need to destroy some of my overeating and I really just want to lean max. But it's specifically trying to avoid like any food that's going to tempt me. I'll do a chicken, rice, vegetables. You can replace the rice with like a potato, for example, as well. But really, your preference: a lean protein, a fuel source being your carb, and then some vegetables works pretty well. And then I'll do eggs, egg whites. I'll cook them both separately. Even though if you combine like a bunch of egg whites and eggs and you scramble them, it's actually going to taste worse than both of them. But then I'll do plain oats and maybe like a banana. I'm not someone who's going to like overeat bananas. And the oats plain, yeah, I could keep eating them just because they're the fuel source. But it's not a food where I'm like, this tastes too good to put down. So going very simple and plain with your diet can also make things easier. If you notice with this diet, I'm really only getting fats from very little fat from the chicken breast, and then my whole eggs are going to give me the fat in my diet. So that's what I'd recommend, just finding like a simple diet if you need to go through that phase to sort of get your mindset out of overeating, can work really well. And let me know what you guys thought of these tricks and sort of my pillars to everything, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.